the best of the week on Relevant Radio.
My take on AI is, just as I'm not afraid of the internet, even though I understand its potential for terrible things like pornography, etc., I'm not afraid of it. I'm not afraid of a knife if I pick up a knife because I know how to use a knife. I know I'm not going to cut myself. So I'm not afraid of the knife. Now, if somebody else has the knife and they're aiming it at me, okay, that's a different story. But in terms of my own use of the internet, I'm not afraid of it. I know the neighborhoods to stay out of, and I know the good things that can benefit me and my family, etc., and you. I take the same approach to artificial intelligence. To me, it's the same kind of thing. I'm not afraid of it, but I acknowledge, I freely grant that the capability, the potential for terrible things being done by artificial intelligence is certainly there. And I see it as maybe something even bigger than the rise of the internet was. At the beginning, I remember, you probably remember too, Cyrus, long about 1994, 95, even a little bit earlier than that, people didn't really understand what is this internet thing. I know I can send emails and I can look at things and whatnot or chat with people, but what else is it for? I think that the rise of AI, because it reminds me a lot of that era, that it's going to be the same or bigger in terms of what this will mean for human society going forward, in a way similar to what the internet now means for human society in our day and age, 30 years later, etc. So with that in mind, in my conversations with people, I'm very attentive to their concerns. And although I don't share the kind of fear or the sort of reflexive fear or disagreement with artificial intelligence, I don't personally feel that way because I see great potential for good that could be brought to bear, while at the same time fully acknowledging the negatives. Okay, so this is the background for me, at least, as I looked at this story. And this is a survey that was done about young people, about American teenagers. And this is an article by Joshua Nelson, a new study showing that a third of American teenagers, so your sons and daughters, my kids are grown up now, but this describes my grandchildren. The study shows that a third of American teenagers prefer chatting not on Twitter, not on Insta. That's what they call it now, Cyrus. Did you know that? It's cool to say Insta. Or the other ones, it's not there. They're chatting with artificial intelligence. They have the ChatGPT app on the phone or the Grok or some of the other ones. A third are, and this is the age cohort that they looked at was 13 to 17, that they prefer to talk to an artificial intelligence thingy instead of actual people. So the report was titled, it's Common Sense Media did this report. It's called Talk, Trust, and Trade-Offs, How and Why Teens Use AI Companions.
You're not talking about texting their friends. You're talking about their having a conversation with AI.
Right. AI. Let's just say ChatGPT or Grok. The report explained, I'm just going to share it here. The report explained the use of AI companions. And it's interesting, the term companion now humanizes something that's not human. Because when you think of a companion, you think of, somebody who's going with you on a trip, or you're going out to go ice skating and you're companions. It's not a term that people use much anymore. But even the use of the phrase an AI companion to me is unsettling because it's humanizing something that is clearly not human. So to continue, the use of AI companions is not a niche interest, but it's a mainstream teen behavior. They find that conversations with AI companions to be as satisfying or more satisfying than conversations with real-life friends, family, etc. Common Sense Media founder and CEO James Steyer, he says, AI companions are emerging at a time when kids and teens have never felt more alone. This is true. We've seen this. The kids are being more and more isolated into this online world where they'd rather text a friend than talk to the friend face-to-face. They'd rather communicate over the apps and things, Snapchat, Instagram, etc., than actually go to somebody's house and hang out without a phone, just like talking to the person. And the press release that accompanied this study says this isn't just about a new technology. It's about a generation that's replacing human connection with machines and outsourcing empathy to algorithms and sharing intimate details with companies that don't have kids' best interests at heart. The research, the company says, shows that AI companions are far more commonplace than people may have assumed. And I think that goes double for parents. This may be far more common than you realize in your own children. And they warn that there's a narrow window to educate children and families about the well-documented dangers of these products. Back to the fears that some of my friends are expressing. Now, they're not expressing it about this. This is like a new thing that I just ran across in the last couple of days. They say that although nearly half of teens are using AI companions as a tool, 33% of these teens, they admit in this survey, which suggests to me that maybe the number might be higher than what they actually admit to, but 33% say they use it for emotional support. For example, teens use AI to help them live out relationships, for emotional support, for role-playing, for romantic interactions and friendship, and probably for other things that are not particularly wholesome. A writer at a company that studies this phenomenon talked about the loneliness epidemic among young people and that it could lead to an invasion of privacy. That's for sure. Some teenagers, he says, some teenagers are telling AI their most intimate problems and secrets, which pose another problem. It's not a good idea to entrust this information to tech companies, some of whom have an extremely lax approach to their data privacy. Would you really want Sam Altman or Elon Musk to have access to the contents of your teenage diary? That's according to James Gregg, who wrote this. I'm going to pause there. I think that that's a problem, but there's a much bigger problem. If it's online, it can be hacked. And what happens when ChatGPT gets hacked, or Grok, or one of the other companies, which I suppose in due time it will be hacked, and then whatever you put on there can be made known publicly. So, I mean, parents, your children don't realize this. I would dare say probably a lot of adults don't think about it either. Just being able to speak to an AI companion, Greg writes, might alleviate the feeling of loneliness, but some people may find it helpful. But if it's becoming a replacement for socializing in the real world, then it risks entrenching the problem. That's putting it lightly. So the privacy risk is huge, but also, and more importantly, the continuation or the intensification of the isolation of young people, where, like, how are you putting it, Cyrus? And you're talking about the tendency of, like, you know, your kids who are now becoming young adults. I think you have one who's still a teenager or two. And it's all about the phone. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you want to describe it like where it's sort of phone-centric and app-centric, and the social interactions aren't like the days of yore where they might get together in person and hang out and listen to music. Now it's, for the most part, going through the phones. Am I right?
Definitely. My son, he's 18, he's a gamer, so his social interactions, not 100%. He's actually gotten a little bit better in the last few months, but for a large part of his high school years, his major social interactions were all online, and that's where he would hang out with his friends.
In the gaming world?
In the gaming world. So when I was a kid, I would go over to my friend's house, or they'd come over to my house, and we were gamers, and so I understand how compelling and fun video games with your friends can be. It really can be an absolute blast, and you laugh a lot, and you have a great time. But I was in the
you're in the same room together in those days, right?
So that he's just wearing a headset and a microphone, and he's hanging out with his friends who are wherever they are. I try to tell him, it's like there's something lost there, but he doesn't see it because he doesn't know he doesn't know what it could be.
Does he think that you're just an old fuddy-duddy when you warn him about things like that, even if he doesn't use the term?
Yeah,
like, Dad, you just don't understand.
He's never said fuddy-duddy, but he's definitely I can see it in his eyes. I'm just old man dad, and what do I know?
Get off my lawn.
Yeah, get away from my video games, Dad. You don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, with years come perspective. I mean, you can look back and see the change. So I'll extend that just a little bit further. So I was a kid long before video games. And so playing games for us, it was out on the street or in the yard, playing baseball or football, that kind of stuff, or we'd go down to the local school and maybe, I don't know, play soccer or something like that. But there were no games that we could actually sit down and play with. That began sort of in the early 1980s, as I recall, where, the pocket electronics games, and Atari was just coming out with its game, and in television and the other things like that. Now, by the time you were playing with them, they were more sophisticated and probably for that reason more addictive. But I bet my generation would have been completely addicted to all of it, but it didn't exist then. So maybe we dodged a bullet, I think.
So glad I didn't have this stuff when I was a teenager. And so now think of all these kids. It's been summer. All summer long, they haven't been playing outside. They've been sitting inside doom scrolling, and they just scroll and scroll and scroll, looking for 1 second of entertainment, and then they move on to the next thing. It's all throwaway entertainment. And then they're finally going back to school in a few weeks or sooner. And the first thing that's going to happen is they're going to be given Chromebooks or some kind of a tablet.
Online connection.
And they'll be back online. So they go from being online at home to being online. They can't get away from it.
And what about this 1/3 of U.S. teens, and I suppose that number is going to grow. How could it not grow? If they have an emotional support relationship. And by the way, I want to pause and say, I actually know somebody who's not a member of my family, but I know somebody who has this kind of connection to artificial intelligence, an app on the phone, and pouring out, details. This is not a member of my family, but if I know somebody, you probably know somebody, and everybody listening probably knows somebody. And if you have teenagers, that somebody may be in your own home. So this is what I'm leading up to here. Cyrus is going to post the link to the article, and you can check it out for yourself. It's very well worth your time to do so, just to be aware of it. Again, the privacy issue, because sooner or later, I expect that these companies will be hacked. I hope not, but I suppose they will. And so, number one, a good rule of thumb is don't put anything on there that you don't want to be made public. Don't put anything on there that's sharing your deep, dark secrets and feelings and concerns and whatnot, because that could easily become public. But for that matter, even if it doesn't become public, that's product that can be marketed to companies who would say, all right, let's crank up the Pfizer machine and let's get some mood-altering drugs into these families because, look, they have teenage kids that could really use it. So that's my first thought, parents especially. Number two, parents, you are your children's first line of defense. You are their guardians. You are the guardians of their galaxies. So my advice to you would be get with your kids. This age cohort says between 13 and 17, but I'm quite sure that there's excess on either end of that spectrum. Your older kids, your younger kids, find out, number one, my advice, find out if they're using AI. And I'm not saying don't let them, but I mean, even that's really a risky thing for younger people. Because who's programming the AI? How will they know if they just assume that Grok, whatever it tells you, is going to be gospel, or ChatGPT is going to be gospel? How do they know at 13, 14, 15 years of age how to spot an error? Like, that's not true. That's not real. I've had that happen a few times where I get an answer back from an AI and I know that it's not true, and I'll challenge it. I'll say, that's not true. Oh, yeah, you're right. That's not true. Parents, get with your kids, talk to them about it. It used to be that you had to have the drug talk. Just say no to drugs, as Nancy Reagan would say, which is, it's good advice. But I'm not saying say no to AI. I think I would say no to AI for kids. Absolutely. That's my advice. Check out the article and act accordingly would be my advice. You can join me by listening to The Patrick Madrid Show on the Relevant Radio app, live each weekday at 8 to 11 a.m. And thanks for listening.